It's a real pleasure to meet you, man. And thank you and Ash for having me on, bro.
Oh, thank you so much for being on. It's our pleasure. And you want to just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, how you got into Scientology, and well, we'll get to what you do now later on. Yeah, how you got into it? Was it a family thing?
It was, my friend. I'll try to keep this succinct and brief. So my dad went down to work one day when I was around 9 or 10 years old, and he happened to look in the newspaper, and in the bottom right-hand corner, it said Dianetics, learn how to communicate better. And for the audience, Dianetics is obviously the precursor to Scientology, right? So my dad went down to the local mission, and he came back later that night with what I describe as a 1,000-yard stare. He was hypnotized, basically, Sean. And he came back speaking differently, acting differently. And he told my mother that he needs to borrow a large sum of money from his brother in order to do Scientology. And this went on for a couple months where my parents were arguing where if he wasn't allowed to do it, he might have to get a divorce. Long story short, I eventually got sucked into it when I hit a transitional or vulnerable point in my life, which is when cults get you, and the whole family got sucked into it.
How old were
And I
you?
got out. I was around 9 or 10 years old when my dad came home that night with that, hypnotized, glazed look. It freaked all of us out. My mother didn't know what was happening. And I'll just give you the quick timeline. So 9 or 10 years old, my dad got into it. My mother eventually went down to the mission a few months later, and she signed up for it. We can discuss the process of how they get you in. It's called Finding Your Ruin. And she kind of accepted Scientology. And then they worked on me when I was like the black sheep of the family. So whenever I get in trouble, they'd sit me down and they say, do you want to be punished for a few months? Or would you like to go ahead and take a course down at Scientology? Right. And so I eventually was getting slowly brainwashed. I didn't like it. I knew it was evil. I knew evil entered our family. I knew something was wrong, but the basic tenets made sense. So eventually, around 19 or 20, when I was in a kind of a low transitional point, I took to Scientology, and I didn't get out until I was 35, and I woke up in a single day out of it.
Yeah, so just out of curiosity, I did go into the Scientology Center in London and watch the videos and do the personality test. And they're still sending me letters to this day.
Yes, they
So,
are.
for example, then, if I had took it to the next level, how would they have hooked me in?
Well, you would have done a communication course, right, Sean? They would have gone over that personality test that you took, and it's designed, rigged to push your buttons, is what they call it. So they would say, Sean, it says here that you're really aggressive in a good way. You can go out and get work done. But over here, it says that your relationships are kind of, bad, or you don't know how to communicate very well, Sean. So for $50, in 2 weeks, we can handle that. And that's how they start you out. $50 on a course. Then it goes up to the next level, which is the purification rundown, which is their pseudo, very dangerous, apparently drug rehabilitation program. That's about 1,000 or 2,000. And then they throw you onto the auditing. That's where you hold the soup cans, Sean, and they put false memories into you, but you think you're going spiritually free. And that becomes thousands and thousands of dollars. Beyond that, you go up to the confidential levels. And that's how far I got up before I literally had a nervous breakdown. It creates schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder on purpose at those levels.
That's interesting that you got information about the drug rehabilitation program because one of my best friends in America died in it. So he was the guy who kept
Really?
sober when we were doing parties, and I put him in charge of, like head of the security team. But when we all got arrested, he got depressed and he went to hard drugs. And his parents went online, and some broker sent him to a Scientology rehab, and they put him on medication. And a side effect of the medication was suicidal thoughts, and he hung himself. And this is documented, it's online. His name's Courtney Bates. And I think the family got a compensation from the Scientologist, like a six-figure sum. So what happens in these programs?
Wow, Sean, I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, yeah,
That just blows my mind because I know a lot of people that died on that too.
yeah.
Um,
Tell us about it.
do you want to? Do you want to hear what goes on in the purification program, Sean, or the auditing, or like the basic courses? What would you like to hear?
All of them, if we've got
There's a whole
time.
bunch.
Yeah, all of them.
I'll tell you about the purification. I'll tell you what your friend went through. This is what they
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
That's really disturbing, by the way, because I hate to hear that. And I know all about Narcanon. I did that program 3 times, by the way. And what they do, like your friend, is they take someone who's down and out that needs legitimate, medical help. And what they would have done to him is strictly Scientology. And not only does that not help, so here's how it goes down. They sell it to you, and why you buy into it is because they say it's simply a running program. You're going to go in a sauna and you're going to sweat. Sometimes you have to be in for about 5 hours a day. You can take breaks here and there every single day for a month or maybe 2 months. So what you do is they overload you with vitamins, but they tell you that's healthy. They start you out low, but it gets really high. You can kill someone with this overdose of vitamins. So you take some vitamins, you go run for 30 minutes, you start sweating. By the way, the main vitamin is niacin. So you start getting really itchy and rashy and all that stuff. And their science is that when this happens, you're turning things on. Their theory, which is totally BS, is drug residuals. If you've done a lot of LSD, they are permanently in your fatty tissue. Sunburns that you've had, they stay with you. So when you're taking these vitamins, running and going into the sauna and sweating it out, all sorts of things start happening. People's skins have turned blue. There's actually been ooze that's come out of it. I personally was, had all sorts of redness. You kind of lose your mind. And they say that's your drug trip turning out. The redness, that's the sunburn. So you think that you're actually getting gain and you're going spiritually free or whatever. What happens at the end of 2 months of doing this? Because it's kind of like an initiation ritual. It's a brainwashing program, and it breaks you down. I was so spaced out of my mind when I did this. And that's when they say you pass. They call it a major stable win. You have to have a win in order to pass it. So once you're broken down and you're out of your mind, and if you live to tell about it, they say, congratulations, you passed the purif. On to the next step. And when I did it, it was at the local church, or that's what they call it. It's obviously a cult. But so, it's big fancy buildings. It looks, all technical and everything. I knew it was the Church of Scientology, but your friend and these other people, they have no idea it's connected to the church. So there's somebody going online right now, paying $10,000 to sign up their kid that needs help, and he's going to go get thrashed at Scientology. And that's how they hook in people from that.
Oh my God, it's so sad to think that he went through that. Isn't there like the government agencies, like medical, treatment and handing out drugs, the FDA, whatever? Aren't there some kind of laws to prevent this?
There are, Sean, and I don't have the information on whether or not Narcanon is allowed or recommended necessarily, but I believe that they have recommended it. You're talking about when criminals or whatever, are in. I lost you on my end, Sean? Can you still?
No,
see
you're
me?
fine. It was just that to replace my camera battery. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so they do. I don't know for sure, Sean, whether or not they still recommend it to people. But you're talking about people that are up on criminal charges. Hey, you need to go, do a drug rehab program, right? I'm not sure it goes through the court systems. There would be laws against that, but it doesn't prevent them from operating. There's Narcanons all over the world, and they get away with it because, again, as you know all about front groups and how cults and everything, work in a stealthy way.
Yeah. One of the interesting things I heard you say was that they bragged about how they could use the court system to crush people, and they were masters of playing the court system. Could you expand on that?
Yeah. Well, you know all about this, right? I've been watching your channel for years. So you and your audience would know that the court system, the quote unquote justice system, is pretty easy to manipulate. And L. Ron Hubbard, I mean, this cult's kind of deep, in the intelligence field. So it wasn't just like he figured out one day how to come up with all this espionage technology and how to infiltrate the government and like all this stuff. He was schooled in and very well knew how to manipulate the court system. So what they do is if anybody sues them, They simply drag it out forever and they just bury him into the ground. However, something interesting is happening on that right now because actor Danny Masterson from that 70s show is up on rape allegations. And this has a chance to possibly, we hope, sneak Scientology into the case because it came up a little bit as to why the gals were gaslit and they weren't able to report it until a long time later. And they've been under alleged threats. It's not even alleged, dude. They fair game you when you come out. That means they might poison your pet. They do all sorts of things to terrorize you into ever taking them to court. And if you do, they'll drain you. They have over $2 billion and they always win. And L. Ron Hubbard was very aware of that.
Which brings us to the Hollywood connection then. How come Tom Cruise got so deep into this?
He has dyslexia. That was his ruin. So what they do, like we mentioned earlier, is they find your ruin, right? Everybody has a vulnerability and they're experts using that personality test that you talked about to find that out. And all they do is they push on that button. This is what they did to me, my mother, my father, and Tom Cruise. And his button was dyslexia. So he still reads backwards. He didn't have that fixed, but you can go on television or YouTube and watch a clip where he'll claim that it did fix it. So that's how they got him in. And once you get in, and once they hypnotize you and brainwash you through that technology, it's very, very challenging to understand what happened to you, especially if you don't know anything about, advanced psychology or hypnotism or what the hell's happening to you, you know?
Did they get him before he was famous, or was it at a vulnerable point in his life?
Probably a vulnerable point. They got him a little bit after he was just starting to get famous. I believe Mimi Rogers brought him in, kind of under the radar. He wasn't super huge, but they tried to keep that secret. And then and he's been in forever, man. And by the way, Sean, I think he might actually be a sociopath. So I don't think that most of the people there are victims. They're actually kind of empathic people that want to help. Tom might be a sociopath or a psychopath. So I don't know if he's not necessarily benefiting and wants to be there in a certain way. There's a lot of benefits that he gets. He gets free, slave labor to do all sorts of work for him called the Sea Org members. These are people that sign billion-year contracts and basically work for free 7 days a week. They don't see their family and whatever. And some of these people just work for Tom Cruise full time. And so I'm sure he's happy about that.
Wow. So he's saving a lot of money in his staff costs.
Yeah, indeed.
What other famous people got into Scientology? Because we hear about Tom Cruise all the time, but we don't hear about the others.
It's a lot of them, man. A lot of people that are under the radar too that people wouldn't know about. Just yesterday, Laura Prepon, who is best known for that 70s show, which brings us back to the Danny Masterson thing, which I'll mention in a minute. And she was on Orange is the New Black. She just yesterday put out a press conference or a PR stunt saying that she hasn't been in Scientology for 5 years. I think this is personally to distance herself from what's happening with Masterson. She was dating Chris Masterson, who was his brother. That's one example. Jason Doring is another guy who was my best friend for a while before, we had a falling out. He was on, what was he on? Veronica Mars. There's Michael Pena, who is on a whole bunch of movies. I'm trying to think of the more obscure ones. You obviously know John Travolta is. Elizabeth Moss, she is on a show about being under a totalitarian environment while speaking out about how bad it is to be in a totalitarian environment. Also Laura Prepon mentioned that, or in that PR thing, that she's married, I believe, to Ben Foster, or they're together. And they claim that he was never a Scientologist. I doubt that. They have a lot of people that are celebrities, maybe B-level celebrities, that actually get auditing. They'll have an auditor come up to their house. They'll get on those soup cans and they'll do their processing, that never, ever want to affiliate with Scientology. They'll never come out publicly. But there's a lot more people than are even known that are actually receiving counseling.
So what got John Travolta into it? What was his weakness?
I'm not sure specifically, but they had a movie called Going Clear that came out on HBO, which you got anybody's into this, I highly recommend checking it out. He was doing this. He apparently was a very introverted, unself-confident person. And according to the gal in that movie that was kind of handled him, she said that Scientology gave him this confidence, gave him the ability to go out and start booking commercials. He got Welcome Back Kotter. He started getting roles because of Scientology. And that's another very powerful thing that keeps you in there forever. Because if you do have wins or gains or something does happen, and they will help you out, they love bomb you, they pretend, they'll do everything they can to help you, because if you're successful, you're going to give them all your money. So he, in order to understand that Scientology didn't help him, would be almost impossible, because according to him in his life, that's the reason he even has anybody knows who he is.
So if they help these guys with their careers, then as they're getting more famous and more wealthy, do they just start giving Scientology more and more money back?
Absolutely. Not only that, Sean, but they kind of require it. You have to make donations. The more able you become and the higher you get up the bridge, the whole idea is to try to become successful on all areas of life. So one of the areas of life that they push the most is you have to contribute to Scientology. That's the group that makes it possible. That's what gave you everything. So you definitely need to donate back. And they also have a slush fund called the International Association of Scientologists, which members are encouraged for no reason than to protect Scientology, to give them millions and millions of dollars. Tom Cruise has given them millions of dollars. I don't know what John Travolta's, money status is nowadays, but I'm sure he's given millions and millions of dollars. And they have what keeps that thing afloat, Sean, because they don't have a heck of a lot of members, is about 100 or whatever whales. There's a businessman named Duggan, who gave them $200 million as part of, the IAS to help defend Scientology.
So Ash put an estimate that there was 10 million members worldwide. Is that correct, or is that not correct?
No, that's what they say. When I was in the Truman Show bubble and you go to these stupid events and rah, I thought we were told 10 million, 12 million, and now it's growing up to 14. They have 20 to 25,000 members worldwide, including the Sea Org, the staff, and everything. That's all they have. And yet, when you're in that bubble, like I said, they'll tell you and you believe that Scientology is taking over the planet and has 10 million members.
So it's all front. So this drive then to get the celebrities on board was from L. Ron Hubbard. For people not familiar with the founder of Scientology, could you just give us a bit about his background?
His background is super shady. I'm still trying to figure that out to this day, because I believe he was just an intelligence operative. I don't think he came up with this all himself. Okay, so he, Scientology at its core, I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm just telling you what it is. According to Nibs, who is L. Ron Hubbard's son, it is one long black magic ritual extended out over a lifetime. So Hubbard was into the occult. He was into Crowley, Aleister Crowley. So when Crowley died in 1947, he literally said he now is taking over the mantle of the beast. He literally thought he was Satan. And that philosophy and that lust for power and everything, as well as the final document called OT8 at the top, where he admits he's Lucifer the Lightbringer. It's one huge black magic ritual. And when you get up to the OT levels, it's specifically designed, especially the infamous level called OT3. That's the one where I literally went crazy. This is where the one on the South Park show, where you get rid of the alien souls on your body and everything. It's a form of splitting, about trauma-based mind control and stuff, Sean, right? It's a form of splitting the mind.
MK Ultra.
This is the kind of MK Ultra technology. That's exactly what Scientology is. And what makes it different, though, is that unlike, you and Cameron and stuff, where you had to drug them out and play tapes and everything, it's one of the, I call it the most public face of MK Ultra today. And it's the most subtle one. And that's why the powers that be love it, because it's totally hidden. It doesn't seem like you're harming anybody, right? Your friend was going in there just to do a drug rehab. It's subtle enough where they're not sitting there, shocking about everything, But that e-meter, for example, L. Ron Hubbard claimed to be totally anti-psychiatry. He thought psychiatrists were responsible for everything, which is, he was in part talking about the MK Ultra doctors, but he was also super paranoid about this. So he basically, it is doing exactly what he's saying it's not. So it's such a subtle form of MK Ultra. You're putting an electric current through your body. I can't tell you how many times I was on that e-meter, Sean, and I just got knocked out, and then
Jeez.
30 minutes later I'd wake up and the auditor would just be sitting there ready to give me the next question. So anyways, like I said, I think Hubbard has ties to that. It is a subtle version of what was coming out in the 40s, 50s to 60s when that was kicking off with the MK Ultra project. And there it sits today too, by the way. I mean, even though there aren't a lot of members, people are joining all the time, dude. There's celebrities and stuff that are getting it. Just still, it human traffics people. It does everything. It's a criminal mafia organization, but it's under the guise of something that is a little subtle if you don't know what it is. They're not torturing people. You're not going to see people like an Eyes Wide Shut sacrificing people on the corner. It's not a sex cult. So it's quite clever in terms of trapping people if you don't know what it is.
So when you came around and the auditor asked you questions, what kind of stuff would he ask you?
Look around here and find something that's really real to you. From where can you communicate to a dog? Spot a spot in space. The questions are designed to activate the imagination and basically implant suggestions. So that's an example. They have all sorts of different questions, but they're along those lines where they're kind of tricky, right? It gets your imagination and your mind thinking. And then it's a long process, Sean, but basically what happens, let me give you an example. So from where could you communicate to a dog? First of all, you don't know what the hell. So you say to the auditor, what the hell does that mean? Well, they can't give you any what they call verbal tech. So they say, well, let's clear the words. What does from mean? It literally gets that pedantic. So they don't tell you what it means. You just clear all the words and they keep asking you until you finally go, you take a crack at it. From where could I communicate to a dog? Okay, I don't know. Here, thank you. From where could you communicate to a dog? On and on it goes. A lot of these processes eventually will take you into past lives, because once they blow the charge on that question and you the needle or whatever stops, there's no science to this, but this is what they do. They say it's an earlier similar time that you had a problem with so-and-so. And so this is what sends you back past lives. Brother, I made up so many by the time I was in this, I made up so many fake past lives, and they're convincing when you're under this spell, that it took me years to go through all of them and go, dude, fuck, man, it's all. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can.
You're fine. Keep going.
Sorry, I had so many past lives that I had spent years going through and finding out. Obviously, it's stupid, brother, but for me, I didn't know, man. So it took forever to kind of get grounded and understand that I was just having false memories. And
we've only got a few minutes left. How did you get out?
Friend dropped off a book on my doorstep called Combating Cult Mind Control by Steve Hassan. I personally wouldn't recommend his newer books because it's all about, he's not kind of applying his own stuff that was in there. But that book, if anybody were to read it that's in a cult, would have some revelations. I snapped out of it. First of all, Sean, you're not really supposed to. I was going to go report this guy to the church. I wasn't going to read the book. Because I knew I wasn't in a cult, but for whatever reason, it's too long of a story to get into. I cracked open the book and I was out of Scientology about 20 to 30 minutes. I had a heart attack. I knew I was in danger. I knew I was going to lose my family. And then I jumped on the internet, and it took about a decade from there to actually understand what happened to me. I had to lose everything, the family, the acting career, all that. And then finally, here I am, dude, talking to you, man, about Scientology and doing, a channel about it just to kind of get it out there and to kind of heal from it,
Wow, what a ride, Doug. We're going to encourage people to go down to your channel and subscribe. Let me just see. I think somebody sent a question in for you. 1 second. Let me just pull this up. And it's from Donna. They really do brainwash the rich. How rich and foolish do you have to be to donate millions to climb an imaginary ladder to, is it a sea orc or something like that?
Yeah. So what's the question exactly? About the sea
orc? The ladder, the sea orc, what that means. What's a sea orc?
Sea Org are those people that sign. Sea Org are the people that sign billion-year contracts. This is where the human trafficking kicks in, and they have, they'll have kids 6, 7, 8, 10 years old sign billion-year contracts, work as slaves for the rest of their lives for Tom Cruise or for the organization. That's what she's referring to with the Sea Org.
Next.
And by the way, it's not. Just real quick, it's not where it looks stupid from the outside, but if people didn't know anything about it and they went through it, it is a gradual process. It's not that people are unintelligent, because they do have a lot of, I'm not just saying this to feel good or anything. They do. You have to have a certain mentality in order to be able to handle the mind control and the trauma you're going to go through. So they have a tendency to get empathic or intelligent people. They don't hit you with Xenu right away. It's so subtle and slow that you don't see it happening.
What's RPF, the punishment group? That's just come in a question from
Rehabilitation. Yeah. Raymond, the RPF is the Rehabilitation Project Force, and that's where they put newbies who are going to join the Sea Org into the boot camp, and they could be on there for 6 months, a year, 2 years. This is the breaking them down process. Again, they put kids on this, and you also go in there if you did a transgression or if you don't, meet the standards of the Sea Org, which is almost impossible. So people are constantly going to their prison/boot camp, which is called the Rehabilitation Project Force, to break them down again, get them to say they were wrong about whatever disagreement they had, which is why they were sent there. Or it's the training ground to get toughened up to become a Sea Org member for the rest of your life.
Well, some of the kids crack up under the pressure.
Of course, man. Everybody cracks up under the pressure, but there's no way out. So you just learn how to disassociate. That's what the point of it, Sean. That's why I said they have to have certain people that can take the pain, because you're going to disassociate, and you either are going to leave or you're not going to survive. So that personality test that you took and various other things, those are ways of weeding out who's going to actually be able to take to this. That's why it's so secret, kind of, and they really won't let you in, Sean. If you go to the local organization and go in with the camera, they'll get at it. They're a secret society, dude. So they have a ways of selecting who's going to kind of make the grade. They will take anybody, but they have ways to weed them out.
Wow, absolutely fascinating, Doug. We've run out of time, but if you do ever come to London, we'd love to sit down with you and get you to tell your life story on camera. So please let us know if you're heading out this way. And I urge people to support you on your links that we're going to put below this video. So how can people contact you and support you?
Just Dazed But Not Confused on YouTube. Confused is spelled with a Z, and all the links to email, etc. is in there if people want to contact me. Sean, I have been a fan for a long time, brother. I watch you all the time, and I really appreciate you having me on, man. And to Ash, too.
Yeah, I really appreciate you spending time with us today, and it is absolutely fascinating, but I'm sure there's so much more to it. So hope to speak to you again, Doug. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, man. Have a good night, Sean.
Cheers. Bye-bye.